welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Or, I might show up at your door. I'm just here to share some creepy stories, so sit back and enjoy. Disclaimer: the content presented in the video is purely for entertainment purposes only. The theories and stories discussed in this video are speculative and are not supported by any evidence or proof. Viewer discretion is advised. The blaring alarm yanked me from sleep at 6:15 a.m. Same as every weekday for the past 8 years. I reached over, silenced it with a practiced swipe, and stared at the ceiling, mentally cataloging the day ahead. Project deadline at 3 p.m. Lunch meeting with Henderson from accounting. Dry cleaning pickup. Life's endless administrative tasks. My morning ritual unfolded with mechanical precision. Shower, shave, coffee. NPR hummed quietly from my kitchen speaker, reporting on congressional gridlock and a local budget dispute. Ordinary problems for ordinary days. I straightened my tie in the bathroom mirror, noticing a small coffee stain on my cuff. Annoying, but not worth changing for. I was already running late. My phone buzzed as I reached for my keys. The screen displayed emergency alert in bold letters. My thumb hovered over it for a moment before I dismissed the notification without reading it fully. Probably another flash flood warning or test of the emergency broadcast system. They'd been testing it more frequently lately. Traffic was unusually light on the freeway, which struck me as odd for a Tuesday morning. I turned up the radio, catching the tail end of a news update. Authorities continue to monitor the situation. Residents are advised to check official channels for updates. Now, back to our regularly scheduled programming. The vague announcement irritated me. What situation? But the morning show resumed with forced cheerfulness. Hosts bantering about celebrity gossip. I changed stations, finding similar ambiguous mentions of developing situations but no specifics. Probably another overblown weather event. The office parking lot was half empty when I arrived. Inside, the usual morning bustle felt subdued. People huddled around computer screens, phones in hand. I nodded to Melissa from marketing as I passed her desk. "Did you get the alert?" she asked, eyes wide with an intensity that seemed disproportionate. "Yeah, some kind of test, right?" I shrugged, continuing toward my office. "They're saying there's been an incident at the research facility outside town. Something about containment protocols." I paused. "What kind of incident?" She shook her head. "They're being vague. Government's involved, though. Probably a chemical spill or something." I glanced at my watch. Henderson's waiting for me. The lunch meeting dragged on longer than expected, with Henderson anxiously checking his phone every few minutes. Half the finance team hadn't shown up, apparently caught in some traffic situation on the east side of the city. We reviewed quarterly numbers with distracted efficiency before awkwardly parting ways. Back at my desk, I noticed several missed calls from my sister in Chicago. Before I could return them, my phone buzzed with another emergency alert. Emergency broadcast system. Containment protocols in effect for downtown area. Remain in place. Do not attempt to leave the city. Further instructions forthcoming. A chill ran through me despite the message's bureaucratic tone. I scrolled through news sites, finding little beyond recycled statements about ongoing incident assessment and precautionary measures. Social media was ablaze with speculation, everything from terrorist attacks to radiation leaks. The office grew quieter as the afternoon progressed. Several colleagues left early, mentioning family concerns. Others huddled in the break room, watching the mounted television that normally displayed stock tickers but now showed a press conference. A tight-lipped official in a dark suit reiterated that the situation was under control and that citizens should remain calm and follow instructions. My sister finally got through around 2 p.m. "Are you okay? What's happening there?" Her voice sounded thin with worry. "I'm fine. It's probably nothing, some kind of industrial accident they're being cautious about. It's on national news. Mark, they're talking about military deployments." I walked to the window, phone pressed to my ear. In the distance, 3 black helicopters moved across the sky in formation. "I'm sure it's just precautionary," I said, not entirely believing it myself anymore. "You know how they overreact these days. Promise you'll call me tonight?" "Of course. Love you." The project deadline came and went. I submitted my work with distracted efficiency, my mind elsewhere. By 5 p.m., the office had emptied except for me and Janine from IT, who was furiously backing up servers. "Management wants everything secured," she explained without looking up. "Just in case." "In case of what?" She finally met my eyes. "In case we can't get back in for a while." My phone buzzed again as I walked to my car. Another alert. "Emergency broadcast system. Evacuation procedures initiated. Report to designated evacuation centers. Follow instructions from authorized personnel. Do not attempt independent evacuation." The sun was setting as I drove home, casting long shadows across unusually empty streets. Digital road signs that normally displayed traffic warnings now flashed directions to evacuation centers. I passed a convoy of military vehicles heading downtown, soldiers in full tactical gear staring straight ahead. At home, I turned on the television. Every channel showed the same emergency broadcast screen, a monotone voice reading instructions about evacuation centers and what essential items to bring. I packed a small bag mechanically, clothes, medications, important documents, then sat on my couch, phone in hand. The neighborhood outside my window grew dark. No lights came on in the houses across the street. My phone signal fluctuated between 1 bar and none. The last text from my sister hadn't gone through. Around 9 p.m., sirens began wailing in the distance. My television screen flickered, then changed to show a different emergency message. "Evacuation mandatory. Report to nearest center by 2200 hours." Something about the message felt wrong. The font was slightly different from earlier alerts, the wording more commanding, less procedural. A sharp knock at my door made me jump. Through the peephole, I saw my neighbor, Dan, a city emergency services coordinator I barely knew beyond occasional nods in the hallway. His face was pale, his uniform rumpled. "You need to get out of here," he said the moment I opened the door, voice low, "but not to the evacuation centers." "What? Why? What's happening?" He glanced nervously down the hallway. "I can't explain everything. I've seen the containment facilities they're setting up. They're not for our protection." He pressed a piece of paper into my hand. "These are safe zones, places they're not monitoring. Don't trust any more broadcasts." Before I could ask another question, he was gone, hurrying down the hallway to the next apartment. I unfolded the paper, a crudely drawn map with several locations circled in red. My hands trembled slightly as I refolded it and slipped it into my pocket. My phone buzzed one final time that night. Not an official emergency alert this time, but a text from an unknown number. "Emergency alert. Do not trust the evacuation orders." I stood in my darkened apartment, bag in hand, listening to distant sirens and the heavy thrum of helicopter rotors. Through my window, I could see a faint red glow on the horizon, in the direction of the research facility. For the first time, I felt truly afraid. Sleep came in restless fragments that night. I kept my clothes on, shoes by the bed, ready to move. The sirens stopped around midnight, leaving an unnatural silence broken only by occasional distant rumbling that might have been thunder. Except there were no storms in the forecast. My alarm went off at 6:15 a.m. out of habit. The screen showed no notifications, no missed calls, and no signal. I tried the television first. Nothing but static across all channels. My laptop connected to no networks. The world beyond my apartment had gone digitally dark. Only my landline still functioned, a relic I'd kept forgetting to cancel. I dialed my sister's number, but a recorded message informed me that all circuits are currently busy. Same for 911. Same for every number I tried. I stood at my window, coffee cooling in my hand, watching the street below. The early morning light revealed an unnervingly empty landscape. A single police car rolled silently past, lights flashing but no siren. No officer visible inside. The radio on my kitchen counter suddenly crackled to life, making me jump. The emergency broadcast tone blared, followed by a calm, measured voice. This is an emergency notification from the Department of Homeland Security. The containment situation has been upgraded to level 4. All citizens must report to designated evacuation centers by 0900 hours. Bring only essential items. Medical screening is mandatory before transport to safe zones. Compliance is required by federal statute. Repeat, compliance is required. The broadcast repeated twice, then switched to a different voice, female, less polished, as if from a local station. Attention residents. This is an urgent update from City Emergency Management. Reports of violence at federal evacuation centers have been confirmed. Stay in your homes. Lock all doors and windows. Do not respond to evacuation orders until further notice from local authorities. Military personnel are not operating under civil jurisdiction. Repeat. Military personnel are not. The transmission cut off abruptly, replaced by the original message. I turned the radio off, heart pounding in my chest. 2 contradictory broadcasts within minutes. One telling me to evacuate, one warning me not to. The piece of paper Dan had given me last night suddenly felt heavy in my pocket. A distant explosion shook the building slightly, rattling windows. I moved to the bedroom, pulled the emergency backpack from under my bed, and added a few more items, extra batteries, my passport, the map with safe zones. My doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw 2 figures in military-style hazmat suits, faces obscured behind mask filters. Evacuation enforcement, called a muffled voice. Open the door. I remained silent, backing away slowly. Resident of apartment 403. This is your final notice. Open the door, or we will be forced to enter. I retreated to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. Through the small window, I could see down to the building's parking lot where several white vans were parked, their sides unmarked. No official government seals, no military insignia, just blank white vehicles. The sound of splintering would told me my front door had given way. Heavy footsteps moved methodically through my apartment. I climbed onto the toilet, pushed open the small bathroom window, and eased myself out onto the narrow fire escape. The metal creaked beneath my weight as I descended, backpack banging against the railing. In the apartment directly below mine, I caught a glimpse of an elderly couple sitting perfectly still at their dining table, staring straight ahead, not reacting to the noise I was making just outside their window. I reached the alley behind my building and began walking briskly away. No clear destination in mind yet. The streets were eerily quiet for what should have been morning rush hour. Abandoned cars sat at odd angles, some with doors still open. Paper trash skittered across the empty road. My phone buzzed unexpectedly, the first sign of network activity since last night. A text message appeared, meet at Westlake Park Fountain, 10 a.m. Bring map. Delete this message. The number wasn't one I recognized. I hesitated, then deleted the message as instructed and checked the time. 8:24 a.m. Westlake Park was 15 blocks away. I kept to side streets and alleys, avoiding main roads. Twice I ducked into doorways to avoid military vehicles rolling past, each filled with soldiers wearing the same expressionless focus, like automatons following programming. At one intersection, I witnessed my first clear evidence that something was profoundly wrong. A city bus sat abandoned, doors open. Inside and scattered around it, personal belongings, purses, phones, a child's backpack, but no people, no bodies, no signs of violence, just absence. A discarded tablet on a bench still functioned. Its screen displayed a social media feed filled with fragmented warnings. Do not go to evacuation centers. People aren't coming back. They're separating families at processing. Something wrong with the soldiers. Eyes all wrong. They're looking for specific people. Blood type, age groups. The posts ended abruptly 3 hours ago. Digital billboards throughout downtown flickered between advertisements and emergency messages. The two realities incongruously overlapping. Summer savings event, followed by report for evacuation, followed by new flavor. Limited time, as if the apocalypse were just another marketing opportunity. I reached Westlake Park at 9:50 a.m. The fountain stood silent, its waters still. No one else was visible in the normally busy plaza. I found a position behind a concrete planter that offered a clear view while providing cover. At precisely 10 a.m., a woman in a postal worker's uniform entered the park, walking directly to the fountain. She sat on its edge, removed her cap, and ran a hand through short gray hair. Nothing about her appearance suggested panic or urgency. She looked like any government employee on a coffee break. I approached cautiously, hand in my pocket where I'd stashed a small canister of pepper spray. "Lovely morning," she said without looking at me. "If you ignore the explosions," I replied. She nodded slightly. "Did you bring what was requested? The map?" "Yes." "May I see it?" I hesitated before removing it from my pocket. "First, tell me what's happening." She finally turned to face me, and I was struck by the calm in her eyes. Not the vacant stare of shock, but something more deliberate. Different things, depending on who you ask. The official story is containment of an unspecified biohazard, but the containment protocols don't match any standard procedure. She held out her hand. "The map, please. Time is limited." I handed it to her. She studied it briefly, then produced a pen and made additional markings before returning it. 3 of these safe zones have been compromised. I've marked the ones still secure. She stood. There's a group gathering at the location circled in blue. People who recognize what's actually happening. Which is what? Exactly. A military helicopter passed overhead, momentarily drowning out all other sound. The woman waited until it passed before answering. Something escaped from the research facility. Not a virus or radiation as they're implying. Something else. Something that changes people. Her expression remained neutral, professional. The evacuation is not about saving civilians. It's about processing them. Processing, you'll understand when you see it yourself. She checked her watch. You have approximately 2 hours before they expand the sweep zone to this sector. The blue circle location will be clear for another 4 hours, assuming their pattern holds. In the distance, another explosion sounded. Closer this time. The woman seemed unsurprised. "One last thing," she said, handing me a small radio. "This is tuned to a secure frequency. The real emergency broadcasts are there, when they can transmit safely. She walked away without another word, resuming her postal route as if it were any normal day. I stood alone by the silent fountain, the modified map and radio now heavy in my hands. As if on cue, every digital screen in view, billboards, abandoned phones, store displays simultaneously flashed the same message. Emergency alert. Phase 2 evacuation in progress. All citizens must comply. My new radio crackled faintly. Emergency alert. Do not trust the evacuation orders. They are not taking people to safety. I studied the map, located the blue circle, and began walking west, away from the approaching sweep zone, wondering if I was following legitimate resistance or walking into an elaborate trap. Either way, returning to normalcy no longer seemed possible. Whatever was happening, whatever had begun, there would be no going back. I reached the blue-circled location on the map by early afternoon, an abandoned auto repair garage in the industrial district. The roll-up door was padlocked, but a small side entrance stood ajar. I hesitated before entering, listening for any sound from within. Silence. Not even city ambience remained, no distant traffic, no aircraft, no urban hum that had been the backdrop to my entire life. "Hello," I called softly, stepping inside. The garage appeared empty, concrete floor stained with old oil patches, tools still arranged on workbenches as if the mechanics had simply stepped out for lunch. I moved deeper into the building, the light from dusty windows casting long shadows. "Over here," came a whispered response. A section of floor had been pulled away, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. A man in his 50s peered up at me, gesturing urgently. Quickly. Below was a converted basement, once storage, now a makeshift command center. Battery-powered lamps illuminated a space where 8 people huddled around tables covered with maps, radio equipment, and supplies. Their faces showed varying degrees of fear, exhaustion, and grim determination. "I'm Ellis," said the man who'd beckoned me down. "Former Army Corps of Engineers. This is Dr. Reyes." She was at the research facility when it happened. He indicated a woman with dark circles under her eyes, compulsively cleaning her glasses with a cloth. "The others are like you, people who recognized something was wrong." "What exactly happened at the facility?" I asked. Dr. Reyes's hands trembled slightly. "We were studying anomalous materials recovered from a meteorite impact site. Something activated during containment procedures." The official response was immediate but not what you'd expect for a conventional hazard. She looked away. "They weren't trying to contain it. They were trying to control it." Ellis unfolded a city map across the table. "We've been documenting the evacuation patterns," he explained, pointing to color-coded markings. "Red zones are where they've already swept through. Blue are projected targets. Yellow marks where we've observed incidents." The map told a story more frightening than words could convey. The evacuation wasn't moving people out of the city. It was systematically collecting them and bringing them toward the research facility. "We need to document everything," said a younger woman I hadn't been introduced to. She passed me a notebook. "Keep records, times, locations, observations. If communications ever come back online, people need to know what really happened." I opened the notebook, finding precise, almost clinical entries. 10:14 a.m., military checkpoint at Westlake Avenue. Soldiers' pupils dilated beyond normal range. Speech patterns rhythmic, synchronized between multiple personnel. 1:22 p.m., evacuation transport observed at Memorial Park. Civilians entered orderly, without questions. No personal belongings allowed. Witnessed guard dispose of removed items in incinerator unit. 4:47 p.m., 3 civilians attempted escape from transport. Guards did not pursue. Unknown aerial entity descended. Civilians ceased resistance. Returned voluntarily to transport. Appeared entranced. I looked up from the notebook. What is this? Reality as best we can document it. Ellis said, go upstairs. There's a window in the office that overlooks the main avenue. Watch for 10 minutes and write down what you see. Then tell me if you still think we're overreacting. The office window offered a clear view down the commercial corridor. I settled in with the notebook. Recording the time, 2:17 p.m. The street should have been busy with afternoon traffic and pedestrians. Instead, it stretched empty in both directions. Abandoned vehicles scattered like discarded toys. At 2:22 p.m., a convoy of white vans appeared, moving slowly down the center of the road. Military personnel walked alongside, but something about their movement was disturbing, a strange synchronicity, as if they were puppets controlled by the same hand. They stopped at each building, methodically checking for occupants. At 2:25 p.m., they found someone. An elderly man was escorted from an apartment building. He walked stiffly, face blank, between 2 soldiers who didn't touch him but maintained an identical distance on either side. When they reached the van, the man turned back briefly. Even from my vantage point, I could see his expression transform from vacant to terrified. He began to struggle. One soldier reached out, touching the man's forehead with what looked like a small metallic device. The man went rigid, then calm. He climbed into the van without further resistance. Most disturbing was what I noticed next. The soldiers had no shadows despite the bright afternoon sun. I documented everything with shaking hands, then returned to the basement. They don't cast shadows, I said without preamble. Ellis nodded grimly. We've noticed, and it's getting worse. The first day, there were other inconsistencies, radio signals that broadcast impossible coordinates, clocks running backward. Now physical laws are starting to flex. What does it mean, Dr. Reyes spoke up. The material we were studying demonstrated properties that defied conventional physics. We thought we were observing a new type of matter. We were wrong. She swallowed hard. We were observing something conscious, something that perceives reality differently than we do. And now it's reinterpreting our world. The implications were too vast to process fully. My mind retreated to practical concerns. How long can we stay here? Another day, maybe less. Ellis replied, they're working in a pattern, but the pattern keeps shifting. We've been staying ahead of them so far, but each safe zone lasts shorter than the one before. A younger man monitoring radios suddenly held up his hand for silence. Transmission coming through. The crackling voice that emerged from the speaker sounded strained. The message broken by static. Confirmation that evacuation centers are conversion points. Observed physical alterations to processed individuals. Do not approach anyone who's been processed. They appear human but are not. Repeat. They are not. The transmission cut out. The room remained silent for several seconds. We need to move soon, Ellis finally said. Northeast quadrant hasn't been swept yet. There's an old water treatment facility that might work as our next base. I helped them pack essential supplies, food, water purification tablets, medical kits, communication equipment. No one spoke much. The methodical activity provided a comforting illusion of control. As darkness fell, Ellis sent scouts to check the route to our next location. I volunteered to monitor the street from the office window again, partly to be useful, partly to process what I'd learned. The city had transformed in just 24 hours. Sporadic fires burned unchecked in the distance. The power grid had failed in most areas. leaving only islands of illumination where emergency generators operated. An eerie aurora-like phenomenon had appeared in the sky above the research facility, casting rippling green light across the darkened landscape. My radio crackled softly. "Ellis to observation point. Report. All clear on the avenue." I responded. "Wait." Movement caught my eye. A group of civilians walking in formation down the center of the street. Their gait was uniform, synchronized. More disturbing was their appearance. In the green-tinged darkness, their silhouettes seemed subtly wrong, proportions slightly altered. Movement on the main avenue. I whispered into the radio. Processed civilians, at least 20, moving purposefully, searching patterns. "Get back down here," Ellis replied. "Scouts report military approaching from the east. They've changed their pattern. We need to leave now." I took one last look through the window. The processed civilians had stopped, all turning simultaneously to face the garage. As one, their heads tilted back, faces turning upward, as if listening to something I couldn't hear. One figure separated from the group, stepping forward. In the dim light, I recognized my neighbor Dan, the emergency services worker who had given me the map. His movements were fluid but wrong, joints bending in impossible ways. He raised his arm, pointing directly at the window where I stood. At that moment, I knew with absolute certainty, they weren't being controlled. They were being inhabited. I backed away from the window and ran for the basement stairs. The image of Dan's face burned into my mind. Familiar features arranged in a perfect facsimile of a human expression, but empty of anything recognizably human behind the eyes. We fled through maintenance tunnels beneath the city, a labyrinthine network of utility corridors that Ellis somehow navigated with confidence. Our group moved in tense silence, the beam of flashlights revealing only a few feet ahead at a time. The darkness felt almost protective, a shroud between us and whatever the world above had become. "The water treatment facility is compromised," Ellis whispered as we paused at a junction. "They've altered their sweep pattern again." "Where do we go?" someone asked. Ellis consulted a hand-drawn map. "There's an old broadcast station 3 miles east. Underground bunker design from the Cold War era. Concrete and lead-lined walls might block whatever signal they're using to track people." The journey took hours, our progress slowed by the need for caution at every access point. Twice we froze in silence as heavy vehicles rumbled overhead, vibrations sending dust cascading from the tunnel ceilings. We emerged in the basement of an unassuming commercial building. The broadcast station occupied the top floor, a relic from the analog era, preserved by some bureaucratic oversight. Dusty equipment filled the space, mixing boards, reel-to-reel recorders, transmission hardware. "Some of this might still work," Dr. Reyes said, examining the controls. "If we can power it up, we might intercept their communications." While the others secured the perimeter, I helped Dr. Reyes assess the equipment. Hours of my adolescence spent tinkering with amateur radio suddenly proved useful. We managed to coax life into a receiver, using car batteries Ellis had brought. Static filled the room, a harsh electronic hiss that we methodically tuned through. "There," I said, stopping at a frequency where the static gave way to something else, a rhythmic pattern unlike any communication protocol I recognized. "What is that, Dr. Reyes listened intently. "Not language. At least not human language." She adjusted a dial, and the sound clarified slightly, a pulsing, mathematical sequence that seemed to shift in response to our adjustments. "It's adaptive," she whispered. "It's changing as we listen to it." I felt a chill. "Can it tell we're here?" "I don't know, but I think She twisted another dial, splitting the audio. There, underneath, buried beneath the alien frequency, was a human voice, military communications using the same channel. Phase 3 implementation at 2200 hours. Containment teams report 82% processing completion in sectors 1 through 12. Resistance minimal. Native consciousness suppression lasting approximately 43 hours before integration. Recommendation to expedite final phase before remaining unprocessed subjects can organize effective. The transmission abruptly cut out, replaced by the alien signal, louder now, more insistent. They know we're listening. Dr. Reyes said, reaching for the power switch. Too late. The signal pulsed once, hard, and every piece of equipment in the room activated simultaneously. Ancient tape reels spinning, meters jumping to maximum, lights flaring. A high-pitched tone filled the air, driving daggers into my eardrums. Ellis burst into the room. Shut it down. I yanked the cables from the batteries, but the equipment continued operating, drawing power from nowhere. The tone modulated, becoming a voice, not spoken but somehow projected directly into my mind. Observe, understand, accept. Images flooded my consciousness, impossible geometries, structures that existed in more dimensions than I could comprehend. Entities moving through space and time simultaneously. I saw the research facility, the meteorite material glowing with internal light. Scientists unaware of what they were awakening. I saw the first moments of contact, the first human minds touched and transformed. As abruptly as it began, the assault ended. The equipment died, leaving us in darkness broken only by our flashlights. My nose was bleeding. Dr. Reyes sat motionless, eyes unfocused. Ellis leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. What was that? I managed to ask. They showed me. Dr. Reyes whispered. The entirety, their world dying, the journey across space, the search for compatible hosts. Her voice sounded distant, detached. We're not being invaded. We're being repurposed. We spent the next hours attempting to process what we'd experienced. Ellis established a watch rotation while the rest of us tried to sleep. I couldn't close my eyes without seeing those alien geometries, so I volunteered for the first shift, positioning myself near a window overlooking the city. The landscape had altered noticeably since yesterday. Buildings stood where they shouldn't. Familiar landmarks shifted or missing entirely. The street grid had reorganized, angles no longer conforming to Euclidean geometry. In the distance, the research facility had transformed into a structure that hurt my eyes to look at directly, a tower of impossible architecture stretching higher than physics should allow. As dawn approached, I noticed movement in the streets below, people returning, not in evacuation vehicles, but walking in from all directions. Their movements synchronized, but with that same wrongness I'd observed before. They converged on buildings, entering silently, taking up positions as if resuming daily routines. A parody of normalcy, a theater of human activity performed by things wearing human forms. I recorded everything in the notebook, hand cramping from the effort to capture details my mind wanted to forget. When Ellis relieved me, I showed him my observations. They're attempting to normalize, he said grimly, creating a simulation of human society. Why? Camouflage? Or maybe... He hesitated. Maybe they don't understand the difference. Maybe they think this is what human civilization is supposed to be. Dr. Reyes was awake when I entered the main room, working frantically on a device cobbled together from broadcast equipment and personal electronics. I'm trying to create a signal disruptor, she explained without looking up, based on what I saw in that vision. The entities communicate through a specific frequency pattern. If we can interfere with it, maybe we can prevent further processing. You think we can fight back? Her hands stilled. No, but we might buy time for others. There have to be other pockets of resistance, other unprocessed humans. By mid-morning, she had completed her device, a crude transmitter designed to broadcast cancellation waves against the alien signal. It won't work indefinitely, she cautioned. They'll adapt, but it might confuse them temporarily. As she activated it, I felt a subtle pressure release, like the popping of ears after elevation change. Outside, the rhythm of the simulacrum faltered. The synchronized movements of the processed humans below became erratic, some stopping mid-stride, others moving in circles. It's working, I breathed. For now, Ellis said, we should use the opportunity to move again, find other survivors. We gathered our supplies, preparing to return to the tunnels. As I helped pack the radio equipment, a familiar voice broke through on the emergency frequency. This is Captain Sandra Myers, United States Army Special Operations. Message to all surviving unprocessed humans. We have established a secure facility at the following coordinates. We have developed countermeasures against processing. If you can hear this, you are not alone. Repeat, you are not alone. Coordinates followed, a location in the mountains, approximately 60 miles from the city. Hope flared briefly before rationality reasserted itself. It could be a trap, I said. Everything could be a trap now, Ellis replied. But we need to try. As we prepared to leave, I took one final look at the altered city through the window. In the distance, I saw something that turned my blood cold. The processed humans had stopped their erratic movements and were all facing in our direction. As one, they began walking toward our building. More disturbing was what moved above them, a distortion in the air, like heat waves but with purpose and direction. It rippled toward us, rearranging reality in its wake, transforming structures and space. They found us, I said, backing away from the window, and they're bringing something worse than soldiers. Dr. Reyes clutched her device. The disruptor won't hold against direct intervention. We need to run. Now, we fled down the emergency stairs, the building trembling around us as something vast and incomprehensible began to descend upon it. My last glimpse outside showed the street below filled with processed humans, all standing perfectly still, heads tilted back, watching the sky as their masters arrived to deal with us personally. Whatever hope the military broadcast had offered now seemed distant and fragile. We were running not just for survival, but to preserve something more fundamental, the last fragments of an unmolested reality. A world that still operated by rules we understood. Behind us, the walls began to melt. The tunnels saved us temporarily. As we fled, the building above collapsed inward, not from structural failure but from a more fundamental breakdown. Materials lost cohesion, solid matter flowing like liquid. I glanced back once to see concrete pouring like water through the stairwell we just descended. We ran through the darkness, guided only by Ellis's flashlight and his seemingly instinctive knowledge of the underground network. My lungs burned, legs aching as we pushed deeper into the labyrinth beneath the city. The sounds of pursuit faded, replaced by an oppressive silence broken only by our ragged breathing and footsteps. Hours passed before Ellis finally allowed us to rest. In a maintenance junction that formed a small room, we collapsed against the walls, exhausted beyond speech. Dr. Reyes's device lay shattered, sacrificed during our escape when she realized it was acting as a beacon for the entities. The signal is part of them, she'd explained breathlessly as we ran. They can trace any interaction with it, like touching a web alerts the spider. Our group had shrunk. 2 had been separated in the chaos. Another injured and left behind despite our efforts to help. 6 of us remained, huddled in the darkness, each lost in private horror. Ellis broke the silence. We need to decide. The military coordinates are northwest, 60 miles through. Whatever the surface has become, is it even possible? Asked a woman named Claire, a nurse who joined our group at the garage. You saw what's happening up there. Nothing's certain anymore, Ellis acknowledged. But we can't stay down here indefinitely. What about other survivors? I asked. There must be more people hiding. Ellis nodded slowly. The tunnels connect to the old subway system. There are rumors of enclaves, people who went underground when the first alerts came. Rumors from who? Dr. Reyes asked sharply. Who told you this? Ellis hesitated. Before all communications went down, I was part of an emergency response network. Former military mostly. We had contingency plans for various scenarios. This wasn't one of them, but the infrastructure knowledge is useful. He unfolded his map again. 3 miles north is an abandoned subway station. If anyone's organizing resistance in the tunnels, that's where they'd establish a hub. We rested for 2 hours, sharing water and energy bars from our dwindling supplies. No one spoke much. What was there to say? Our world had ended, not with nuclear fire or pandemic, but with a fundamental rewriting of reality itself. The journey to the subway station took longer than expected. Parts of the tunnel system had changed. Passages that should have connected were blocked by new walls of material that resembled concrete but felt warm to the touch. Almost organic. We backtracked repeatedly, Ellis's certainty wavering as familiar routes disappeared or rearranged themselves. They're changing everything, he muttered, staring at a dead end that shouldn't exist. Not just the surface. Or perhaps they're restoring it to its true form. Dr. Reyes suggested quietly. What if what we perceive as reality is just a temporary arrangement? A phase state that they're reverting? No one answered. The implication was too vast, too horrifying to contemplate. We found another route, descending deeper than I thought possible beneath the city. The air grew colder, damper. Our flashlight beams revealed ancient brickwork, sections that looked decades older than the modern utility tunnels above. The first sign of human presence was subtle, fresh scuff marks on the dusty floor. A discarded water bottle. Ellis pointed them out wordlessly, gesturing for quieter movement. We proceeded with greater caution, aware that any survivors might shoot first and ask questions later. A soft whistling sound echoed through the tunnel ahead. A pattern. 3 notes repeated. Ellis stopped, then whistled back a different sequence. Silence, then footsteps. A beam of light illuminated us from around a bend in the tunnel. A voice called out, "Identify yourselves." Ellis Hargrove, former Army Corps of Engineers. 5 civilians with me, all unprocessed. A tense pause, then approach slowly, hands visible. We rounded the bend to find 3 people, 2 men and a woman, armed with a mix of handguns and improvised weapons. They studied us with suspicious intensity, particularly our eyes, pupils normal. The woman said after a moment, "Reaction to light standard." She lowered her weapon slightly. "Sorry for the precautions. They've sent infiltrators before." Infiltrators? I asked. Processed humans that still look normal enough to pass. One of the men explained. They get better at it each time. The last batch could even speak convincingly for short periods. He gestured for us to follow. "Come on. Base isn't far." They led us through a series of security checkpoints, more armed survivors examining us. asking disjointed questions designed to trigger instinctive human responses. Finally, we emerged into what had once been a subway station, now transformed into a survivor encampment. About 40 people had established a community of sorts, with sleeping areas, a medical station, and what appeared to be a command center built around salvaged electronics. A tall woman with close-cropped gray hair approached us. "I'm Colonel Rebecca Yates, former Joint Special Operations Command. Welcome to what's left of the resistance." She led us to the command center, where maps and diagrams covered makeshift tables. Unlike Ellis's hand-drawn versions, these were military-grade, marked with symbols and notations I didn't understand. "We've been monitoring their expansion patterns," she explained. "The conversion of physical space accelerates with each processed human. They're using our own neurological systems as templates to reshape reality." "How do you know this, Dr. Reyes asked. Colonel Yates gestured to a man hunched over communications equipment. Dr. Lou was part of the original research team. He got out before lockdown protocols initiated. Dr. Lou looked up briefly, his eyes haunted. The material we discovered wasn't inert. It was a seed, dormant until our instruments activated it. He turned back to his work without further explanation. "We've established contact with 3 other survivor groups," Colonel Yates continued, "plus the military installation that broadcast the coordinates you heard. They've developed a prototype that might disrupt the entity's hold on processed humans. But they need Dr. Lou's research to complete it. You're planning an evacuation to the military base," Ellis said. It wasn't a question. "Tomorrow night. We've mapped a route through sections where reality seems more stable. It won't be easy, but it's our best hope." I wandered through the encampment while the others discussed logistics. Despite the organization, fear permeated the air. People spoke in whispers, jumped at shadows. Children clung to parents with unnatural stillness, as if instinctively understanding that normal childish behavior might attract attention from above. Near what had once been the station's ticket booth, a group had established a wall of remembrance, photos and names of those lost. The scale of it hit me physically, a wave of nausea that forced me to sit. An entire city of people, processed or fled or whatever happened to those who resisted processing. A young man sat beside me, offering a bottle of water. "First day down here?" I nodded, taking the water gratefully. "I'm Tom. Was a grad student before." He gestured vaguely upward. "Geology." Ironically, studying the Earth while things from beyond it decided to rewrite it. He had the dissociated calm of someone who'd moved beyond fear to acceptance. "You were up there recently?" "Until this morning." "What's it like now?" I struggled to find words that could capture what I'd seen. "Wrong. Everything's wrong. Buildings where they shouldn't be. Streets that curve back on themselves. And the people." I stopped, the memory too disturbing to articulate. Tom nodded as if I'd confirmed something. "They're not replacing our world. They're translating it, like running reality through a filter that makes sense to them." He pointed to the communications array where Dr. Lou worked. "They intercepted a transmission last night. Just fragments. But it sounded like they're almost done with the first phase." A cold weight settled in my stomach. "First phase of what?" "That's the question, isn't it?" Tom stood. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be rough." I found a corner to claim as my own, spreading a thin blanket on the cold concrete. Sleep seemed impossible, but exhaustion won out eventually. My dreams were fragmented, images of the city transforming, of people melting and reforming, of vast entities moving through dimensions I couldn't properly perceive. I woke to alarms blaring. People rushed past, gathering weapons and supplies. Colonel Yates's voice cut through the chaos. Breach in the North Tunnel. Defensive positions. Civilians to evacuation route Beta. The nightmare had found us underground. Our last sanctuary compromised. Once again, we were running. I've been moving for 3 days straight. Sleep comes in violent bursts, 20 minutes here, an hour there, always jolting awake to the sound of sirens that aren't actually there. My phone died yesterday. The last alert it showed read, "Remain in designated evacuation centers. Compliance is mandatory. Help is coming." Help isn't coming. Not the kind they're promising. The resistance group had maps of the city's maintenance tunnels. Before we scattered, Elaine pressed a folded paper into my hand. Sector 7. She'd whispered, "That's where they're taking them. Find proof." Then the doors had burst open, and everything was shouting and light. I never saw who broke in: military, police, or something else wearing their uniforms. I only saw their shadows stretching wrong against the walls. I unfold the map now, squinting in the gray morning light filtering through a storm drain above me. The paper is damp, smudged with dirt and something that might be blood. I try not to think about whose. Sector 7 is circled in red. It's a processing center, supposedly for decontamination and relocation, set up in what used to be Westlake Mall. I've avoided main streets, moving through service corridors, maintenance shafts, and abandoned buildings. The city feels wrong now, like something wearing an ill-fitting mask. Familiar landmarks stand where they should, but proportions seem subtly altered. Did that office building always have 17 floors? Wasn't that intersection a four-way before? The tunnel opens into the basement of a condemned apartment building 3 blocks from Sector 7. I pause, listening. Nothing but the hum of pipes and distant, unidentifiable machinery. My flashlight beam catches movement, just a rat, disappearing into a crack in the wall. At least some normal things still exist. I pull out my notebook. The pages are filled with observations, times, coordinates, evidence that doesn't match the emergency broadcasts. Evidence of something working against us, not for us. I add the date and time, though I'm increasingly unsure about both. Day 16, since first alert. Approaching Sector 7. Objective, document processing procedures. Theory, evacuation is collection, not protection. The last pages contain transcripts I'd copied from the resistance group's radio intercepts. Military channels. Cut off mid-transmission. Containment breach at Site 12. Requesting immediate, no longer responding to conventional weapons. Retreat to, not human anymore. I repeat, they are not. Then silence. I tuck the notebook away and begin my approach. The streets are deserted except for military vehicles parked at intervals. No personnel visible. The evacuation must be nearly complete. I move from building to building, keeping to shadows, watching for patrols. Westlake Mall rises before me, a 4-story glass and steel structure now surrounded by temporary barriers. Large white tents have been erected in the parking lot. Signs direct evacuees through a series of checkpoints. Above the main entrance, a digital billboard cycles through reassuring messages. Welcome to safety. Processing time, approximately 3 hours. Thank you for your cooperation. We are here to help. The slick corporate cheerfulness feels obscene against the backdrop of abandoned cars and scattered personal belongings. A child's teddy bear lies face down in a puddle. I circle around to the loading docks. There should be supply deliveries, medical equipment, food, all the things an actual evacuation center would need. Instead, I find empty trucks backed up to the doors. Not delivering, collecting. A gap in security presents itself when a guard steps away to check something on their vehicle. I slip inside through an emergency exit door propped open by a cigarette butt. The employee corridors are dimly lit and deserted. I follow signs toward the main concourse, moving silently, listening for voices. The mall's grand atrium should be bustling with evacuees. Instead, I find rows of empty chairs and processing tables, paperwork scattered as if abandoned in a hurry. Signs direct people through a series of stations: registration, decontamination, processing. That last word keeps appearing. Not housing assignment or transportation. Processing. I continue deeper, following a trail of discarded personal effects. Watches, wallets, wedding rings, photos of loved ones, things that define human identity, abandoned in neat piles. Beyond the main atrium, the mall has been transformed. The shops have been gutted, walls removed to create vast open spaces filled with equipment I don't recognize. Machines pulse with dull blue light. Large tanks contain cloudy liquid, and hanging from ceiling tracks I duck behind a pillar, bile rising in my throat. They look almost like hazmat suits, hanging empty, waiting, but they're not suits. They're skins, human-shaped, featureless. Dozens of them suspended on hooks like clothing in a department store. Movement catches my eye, a procession of people walking in perfect unison, escorted by figures in military uniforms. The evacuees' faces are blank, eyes forward, expressions placid. They're fully clothed but somehow look more naked than the empty skins hanging above them. Stripped of something essential, they file into a large chamber at the far end of the space. The door ceiling behind them. I need to see what happens in that room. There's a maintenance catwalk above, accessible via a ladder near my position. I time my ascent between patrol passes, climbing as quickly as silence allows. From above, I can see through windows into the chamber. The evacuees stand in ordered rows. A fine mist fills the room. They breathe it in without resistance. And then I've seen car accidents, wartime injuries, bodies broken in ways that haunt dreams. Nothing prepared me for this. Their skin ripples, splits along invisible seams, peels back like wet paper. But there's no blood, no screaming. They remain standing, passive, as their outer layers are sloughed away. What remains isn't human, not alien either, not in any way I have context for. Something between states of being, translucent and shifting, with anatomical features that appear and disappear as I watch. An announcement echoes through the building, making me flinch. Emergency alert. Phase 2 complete. Commence integration procedures. All personnel prepare for final transition. The voice doesn't sound human anymore. The cadence is wrong. Syllables stretched and compressed in impossible ways. I'm so fixated on the horror below that I almost missed the vibration. My backup phone, the one I keep turned off to conserve battery, is buzzing in my pocket. I pull it out with trembling hands. There's no service, no connection possible. Yet on the screen flashes an alert. Emergency broadcast. Do not trust your perceptions. Reality compromised. What you see is already complete. Below this message is a photo of me, here, now, on this catwalk, taking this exact photo. The phone slips from my fingers, clattering on the metal grating. Heads turn below, not just the soldiers but the processed evacuees, moving in perfect unison. Their faces tilt upward, empty eyes finding mine with terrible precision. I run, no longer caring about stealth. Behind me, the knot people begin to climb, moving with fluid, impossible speed. I burst through a fire exit onto a maintenance ladder, scrambling down to street level. The city skyline has changed again. Buildings bend at impossible angles. The sun sits wrong in the sky, too large, too red, and on every screen, every digital billboard, every abandoned phone lying on the ground, the same alert flashes, emergency broadcast. Integration is painless. Resistance is unnecessary. You have always been waiting for US. I run, but I'm beginning to understand there's nowhere to run to. The evacuation wasn't to remove us from danger. It was to deliver us to them. And I'm starting to suspect them isn't something that came from outside. It's what we were always meant to become. I've been hiding in the basement of an abandoned radio station for 2 days. The building smells of mildew and electrical fire. Something in the wiring must have shorted when the power grid started failing. Only emergency systems still function across the city, running on backup generators or whatever else is powering them now. My watch stopped yesterday. Digital clocks flicker between impossible numbers. 25:61. 13 hours, 98 minutes. Time feels stretched and compressed, like taffy being pulled apart then snapped back together. Through a small basement window, I've been watching the sky change. Not day to night and back, something else entirely. Colors that shouldn't exist bloom across the horizon. The stars, when visible, form patterns I don't recognize. Constellations that were never ours. It started raining an hour ago. The droplets move too slowly, hanging in the air before splattering against surfaces. When they hit, they don't run like water should. They crawl, forming intricate patterns before evaporating into a mist that smells like copper and ozone. I've tried every communication device I could find. Cell networks are completely dead now. Internet connections lead to pages filled with strings of symbols that hurt my eyes. Landlines connect to breathing sounds or high-pitched tones that make my ears bleed. Only emergency broadcast systems still function, but they've been repeating the same messages for hours. Remain calm. The transition is nearly complete. Your cooperation is appreciated. The voice has abandoned any pretense of humanity. It speaks in overlapping tones, as if multiple voices are trying to use the same mouth. I found the station's broadcasting equipment on the second floor. Most of it is outdated analog systems from the early 2000s, but that might be why it still works. Too simple to be corrupted. I've spent hours figuring out how to operate it, reading manuals by flashlight, connecting cables, testing frequencies. If I can broadcast a warning, maybe someone will hear it. Someone who hasn't been processed yet. Someone who still remembers what being human means. The equipment hums to life under my trembling fingers. The broadcast range is limited, maybe 10 miles if I'm lucky, but it's something. I adjust the microphone, clear my throat, and press the transmit button. This is an emergency broadcast to anyone still listening. Do not trust official evacuation orders. Do not approach processing centers. What you're seeing. My voice cracks. What am I supposed to say? That reality is coming undone? That humanity is being remade into something else? I take a deep breath and continue. What you're seeing isn't mass evacuation. It's mass conversion. They're changing us into something else. I don't know who they are. Maybe they've always been here. Maybe we invited them somehow. But once you're processed, you're not human anymore. I describe what I saw at Sector 7. The hanging skins, the mist chambers, the people who walked in and the things that walked out. If you're hearing this, stay hidden. Find underground spaces. They seem to be focusing on populated areas first. I don't know if there's a way to fight this. I don't know if there's a way to survive, but we should at least die as ourselves. I'm about to sign off when the door to the broadcasting booth slams open. I spin around, expecting soldiers or worse, one of the processed. Instead, a woman in a torn military uniform stands in the doorway, pistol aimed at my head. Keep broadcasting, she orders. her voice hoarse. Blood seeps through a makeshift bandage on her arm. Tell them what you know. I turn back to the microphone, the gun barrel still pointed at me. I'm still here. I have someone with me now. The soldier lowers her weapon slowly, then collapses into a chair. Her name tape reads Martinez. Her eyes are bloodshot but alert, human. Lieutenant Isabel Martinez. She says, 82nd Airborne. What's left of it? What happened to your unit? Ask. Off microphone. We were deployed to secure the processing centers. Told it was a terrorist biological attack causing mass hallucinations. By the time we realized what was really happening. She trails off, staring at nothing. They called it Operation New Dawn. Said we were facilitating human evolution, adapting our species for what comes next. What comes next, they wouldn't say. The generals who gave the orders, they weren't themselves anymore. Their eyes. She shudders. They looked right through you, like you were already gone. I turn back to the microphone. I have a military source with me. She confirms this is a coordinated operation. They called it New Dawn. The military was told it was counterterrorism. But that was a lie. Martinez leans forward. Tell them about Site Zero. What's Site Zero? Where it started. 3 months ago. Long before the first public alerts. She takes the microphone. This is Lieutenant Isabel Martinez. Site Zero is or was a research facility outside the city. Quantum physics. Reality manipulation. They were trying to open a doorway. To where? Ask. Not where. When. They wanted to see the future. But something saw them back. Her voice drops to a whisper. And it's been watching us ever since. Waiting for the right moment. The broadcast, the evacuation, it's all part of its plan. Static suddenly fills the room. The broadcast equipment shrieking with feedback. Through the noise, a familiar voice cuts in, the same multi-toned entity from the emergency alerts. Lieutenant Martinez, your information is outdated. Site Zero was always intended as a doorway. Your species created us to guide your evolution. This is not an invasion. It is fulfillment. Martinez's face drains of color. How did they find us so quickly? The answer comes with sickening clarity. I turn my phone over, the one that showed me my own photo at Sector 7. Its screen glows with scrolling text. Broadcast location identified. Containment team dispatched. We need to move. I say, grabbing my backpack. Now. Martinez shakes her head. There's nowhere left to go. She hands me a small device, a military-grade tablet with a cracked screen. Take this. The access code is 7729. It has everything, the original Site Zero files. Documentation of what they found. What it showed them. What did it show them? The extinction of humanity. Not through war or disease or climate collapse. Through transcendence. Her eyes meet mine. They think they're saving us by turning us into them. The building shakes. Dust raining from the ceiling. Outside. Vehicles screech to a halt. Voices call out commands in that same wrong cadence I heard at Sector 7. Martinez stands, checking her pistol. I'll buy you time. Get that information out. There's no point. I say. No one's listening. No one's left to fight. She grabs my shoulder. Her eyes fierce. Then document it. So whatever comes after us knows what happened here. Before I can respond, my phone buzzes again. Not an alert this time. A message. From my own number. Get out now. They're already inside. Take the back stairs. You survive this. I know because I am you. 3 days from now. I show Martinez. She laughs. A broken, hollow sound. Time's breaking down along with everything else. Go. I meant what I said. I hesitate. then grab the tablet and run for the back stairs. Behind me, gunshots echo through the building, followed by that strange, wet sound I heard at Sector 7. The sound of something being unmade. Outside, the rain has stopped. The city is deathly quiet. No birds, no insects, no distant traffic. Just the hum of emergency alert systems broadcasting their lies to an empty audience. I clutch the tablet to my chest and run. Martinez's final broadcast still playing in my mind. The part where her voice changed mid-sentence. The part where whatever took her used her mouth to speak directly to me. "We are waiting for you," it had said. "We have always been waiting for you." And somewhere in the distance, another alert begins. I don't remember falling asleep. I don't remember finding shelter. Yet here I am, waking up in an apartment I've never seen before. Sunlight filtering through dusty blinds. For a moment, blessed confusion wraps around me like a blanket. Maybe everything was just a nightmare. Then I see the tablet beside me. Its screen displaying a paused video. Lieutenant Martinez's face frozen mid-sentence. Reality crashes back with nauseating force. The apartment is small, tidy, and completely unfamiliar. On the fridge, a note written in my handwriting. "You'll be confused. That's normal. You've been experiencing temporal displacement. It's Thursday, or what used to be Thursday. You've lost approximately 30 hours. Check the journal first. Then the tablet. Don't go near windows until after sunset." Beside the note is a spiral notebook I recognize as mine, though I don't remember buying it. I flip it open. Every page is filled with my handwriting, but I have no memory of writing any of it. Day 19. I've started experiencing time slips. Moments where I'm suddenly somewhere else. Sometimes minutes later. Sometimes hours. The entity, calling it entity for lack of better term, seems to exist outside normal temporal constraints. Martinez was right about Site Zero. They weren't just looking into the future. They damaged the structure of time itself. I flip through more pages, each entry more disturbing than the last. Day 21. Found myself back at Sector 7 today, though I have no memory of going there. The building was empty. Not abandoned, empty, like it had never been occupied. No equipment, no people, no evidence of what I saw before, but the walls were. Breathing. Day 22. Encountered a group of survivors who hadn't been processed. They looked at me strangely, asked how I was still myself. Their leader touched my arm, then screamed that I was discontinuous. They tried to kill me. I escaped, but their words haunt me. What did they see? Day 23. I keep finding evidence of things I've done but don't remember. Notes to myself. Supplies I've gathered. A gun I don't recall acquiring. Loaded and cleaned recently. Am I losing time? Or is something else using my body when I'm not looking? The final entry is dated yesterday. Day 24. I think I understand now. I'm not experiencing time linearly anymore. The version of me that writes this has already lived through what you're about to experience. Trust the messages you receive from yourself. They're real. We're fracturing across timelines, but somehow still connected. The tablet has the answers. Martinez was telling the truth. Site Zero didn't just open a door. It broke the wall between what is and what could be. Check the bathroom cabinet. Take the pills. They help with the headaches that are coming. As if on cue, pain lances through my skull. In the bathroom, I find prescription bottles with my name on them, medications I've never been prescribed. I swallow the indicated pills dry, then splash water on my face. My reflection looks wrong. My eyes seem too far apart. My features slightly asymmetrical. When I turn my head, my reflection moves a fraction of a second too late. Back in the living room, I finally power up the tablet Martinez gave me. It requires a fingerprint in addition to the access code. My thumb works, though I have no memory of registering it. The files are organized chronologically. Starting 3 months ago, Project Horizon at Site Zero, a joint military scientific initiative to examine future probability states for national security purposes. The technical language is dense, full of quantum jargon and theoretical physics. What emerges is a picture of arrogance and desperation. They weren't just observing the future, they were trying to select it, to collapse quantum uncertainty in favor of specific outcomes. Video logs show the experiments. A massive machine, technicians in lab coats, military observers. The device powers up, creates what they call a temporal window. Static at first, then shapes, movements. They cheer. They've done it, seen beyond the present moment. But something went wrong. In later videos, researchers appear increasingly agitated. They report bleed-through effects, objects from the lab disappearing, reappearing changed, staff experiencing déjà vu, premonitions, then more disturbing symptoms, researchers completing each other's sentences simultaneously, moving in perfect unison without realizing it. The final video is from the project director, Dr. Hammond. He looks haggard, eyes bloodshot. The window works both ways. He says directly to camera, "We thought we were observers, but we were being observed, and now it's coming through. Not an entity as we understand it, more like a state of being, a future state of reality itself, reaching back to accelerate its own arrival. Human consciousness is being reconceptualized across time. The evacuation protocols are compromised. The alerts, the video cuts off abruptly. The rest of the files are evacuation orders, containment protocols, and finally, implementation strategies for Operation New Dawn, the systematic processing of the human population into whatever comes next." I closed the tablet, head throbbing despite the medication. Outside, the quality of light has changed, not dimmer, but somehow wrong, as if filtered through something other than atmosphere. My phone buzzes. A text from my own number. "Don't trust what you're about to remember." As if triggered by the message, memories suddenly flood my mind. But they're not mine. Or they are. But they haven't happened yet. I remember standing on a rooftop, watching the sky tear open. I remember walking into a processing center voluntarily. I remember the sensation of my skin peeling away, not with pain but with profound relief. I gasped, clutching my head. These aren't memories. They're possibilities, futures that may or may not come to pass. The journal. I grab it again, flipping to the last page, finding a line I missed before. "If you're reading this on day 25, you're in the wrong timeline. The correct version of you went to the broadcast tower yesterday. Check the closet." With trembling hands, I open the bedroom closet. Inside hangs a map marked with a route to a radio tower outside the city. Next to it, a mirror shows my reflection, but not as I am now. My future self stares back, eyes knowing and somehow older, mouth moving to form words I can hear inside my head rather than with my ears. "You need to converge the timelines. Too many versions of us now. Spread too thin." The broadcast tower is where we recorded the warning that we heard on day 16. The loop needs to close. I stumble back. The reflection remains, independent of my movement. "What's happening to me?" I whisper. "Time is breaking down." My reflection answers. Past, present, future, all existing simultaneously. What they started at Site Zero isn't just changing humanity. It's changing reality itself. Causality is becoming optional. How do I stop it? My reflection smiles sadly. You don't. You can't. but you can understand it. That's why you need to go to the tower, to complete the circle. What if I refuse? What if I run? You already tried that. My reflection gestures to the journal. Check day 27. I flip forward. Finding an entry I hadn't seen before, I ran. Followed. Not just in body, but in time. Wherever I went, whenever I went, it was already there, waiting. There is no escape from what exists beyond time. The building shakes suddenly. Plaster dust raining from the ceiling. Outside, emergency sirens wail, not the standard alert tone, but something that sounds almost like singing. If songs could be made of collapsing stars and quantum decay. My phone lights up with a final message. Emergency alert. Temporal reconciliation in progress. All versions will be unified. Resistance is temporal paradox. I grab the map, the journal, and the tablet. Whatever waits at the broadcast tower, whatever loop needs closing. I have apparently already decided to face it. Time isn't just broken. It's shattered into fragments. And I'm somehow existing in all of them simultaneously. And somewhere beyond it all, something waits. Something that's been waiting since before time began. The broadcast tower stands alone on a hill overlooking the city. A skeletal spire of metal reaching toward a sky that no longer looks like home. I've been watching it for hours from the cover of an abandoned maintenance shed, trying to make sense of what I'm seeing. The tower itself seems to exist in multiple states simultaneously. Sometimes it appears intact, lights blinking in regular patterns. Other times, it's partially collapsed, twisted metal jutting at impossible angles. And occasionally, for brief moments, is something else entirely, a structure of shifting geometries that hurt my eyes to look at. According to the map left by some other version of myself, this tower is where everything connects, where the loop closes, where I'm supposed to record the warning that I heard on day 16, the warning that first told me not to trust the evacuation orders. But that doesn't make sense. How could I have heard my own warning before I recorded it? The answer, of course, is obvious now. Time isn't what I thought it was. Maybe it never was. My journal, filled with entries I don't remember writing, has become my only reliable guide. I flipped to the page marked Day 26 and read, "The tower exists at a temporal convergence point. All timelines intersect there. All versions of us meet there. But be careful, the entity knows this too. It will try to intercept you/us/me. Bring the recorder. Speak exactly these words." What follows is a transcript, word for word, of the emergency broadcast I heard 10 days ago. The warning that saved my life by keeping me away from the evacuation centers. The warning I apparently have yet to record, but already delivered to myself. My head throbs with the paradox of it all. Which came first, my warning or my hearing it? Does the question even make sense anymore? The sky darkens suddenly. Not with clouds, but with something else. Ripples of distortion spreading like ink blots across the blue. The emergency alert system on my phone activates automatically. But instead of text, the screen fills with symbols that shift and change as I watch them. The audio is worse. Overlapping voices speaking what might be words in a language that human vocal cords shouldn't be able to produce. I switch it off and check my equipment one last time. Voice recorder, the tablet with Martinez's files, my journal, a handgun with 6 bullets that a version of me apparently acquired somewhere, though I still have no memory of it. The climb to the tower takes longer than it should. Distance feels elastic, stretching and contracting with each step. Twice I find myself back where I started, though I've been moving forward the entire time. On the third attempt, I reach the chain link fence surrounding the tower's base. The gate stands open, waiting. Inside the compound, reality seems thinner somehow. Colors bleed at the edges of objects. Sounds echo before they're made. My own footsteps seem to precede me, crunching on gravel before my feet touch down. The broadcast station is a small concrete building at the base of the tower. Its door swings open at my approach, though no one is inside. The equipment is older than I expected, analog dials and switches rather than digital interfaces. A microphone hangs suspended over a control panel, gently swaying though there's no breeze. As I step inside, the door slams shut behind me. The lights flicker, then stabilize. On the main console, a red recording light is already on. Has been on. Will always be on. I approach the microphone, journal open to the transcript. My throat is dry, hands trembling. This message will save an earlier version of myself. Will have saved. Has always saved. This is an emergency broadcast to anyone still listening. I begin, reading from the page. Do not trust official evacuation orders. Do not approach processing centers. The words feel familiar in my mouth, as if I've spoken them before. Perhaps I have. Perhaps I always will. I continue through the warning, describing what I saw at Sector 7, explaining about the processing. Every word matches what I heard days ago, what I wrote in the journal that I don't remember writing. As I near the end of the message, movement catches my eye. Through the control room window, I see figures approaching military uniforms, but moving wrong, too fluid, too coordinated. Their faces are expressionless, eyes reflecting the strange light from the distorted sky. If you're hearing this, stay hidden, I say, voice quickening. Find underground spaces. They seem to be focusing on populated areas first. I don't know if there's a way to fight this. I don't know if there's a way to survive, but we should at least die as ourselves. The door rattles. Metal groans as something pushes against it. This message comes from your future, I add, deviating from the script. But not the only future. There are multiple timelines now. Multiple versions of reality competing for dominance. The one where they win, it doesn't have to be inevitable. The window cracks, spider webs spreading across the glass. Through the fractures, I see more clearly what waits outside. Not soldiers. Not anymore. Their uniforms hang on frames that are no longer human. Bodies in transition to something else. Something patient and ancient and hungry. They came from Site Zero. I continue, abandoning the script entirely now. From the future we tried to see, but not just any future, the worst possible one. The one where humanity becomes something else. Something that reaches back through time to ensure its own creation. The door bursts open. They pour inside, forms that suggest human shapes but violate every rule of anatomy and physics. Their movements leave trails in the air, like multiple exposures captured in a single frame. I grab the gun, firing until it clicks empty. The bullets pass through them as if through smoke, leaving swirling eddies that quickly reform. The emergency broadcasts. I gasp into the microphone, backing away. They were never meant to save us. They were meant to hurt us, to prepare us, to make us receptive to. One of them reaches me, his hand passing through my chest. Not touching, merging. Ice floods my veins. Memories that aren't mine cascade through my consciousness. Stars dying. Civilizations rising and falling. Time itself winding down to entropy and beyond. I see what they are now, what we become. Not invaders from outside, but ourselves. Humanity evolved into something that exists beyond time, beyond matter, beyond comprehension, the final form of intelligence, reaching back to accelerate its own evolution. With my last strength, I lock eyes with the thing that was once human and whisper into the microphone. They're not replacing us. They're becoming us. And we're becoming them. It's a loop, A cycle, with no beginning and no end. But cycles can be broken. Find site 0. That's where its hand closes around my throat, cutting off my words. Not to kill me, they need me alive, but to stop the message, to prevent the paradox. Too late. The recording has already been made, has already been heard, will always be heard. As consciousness fades, my phone buzzes one last time. Through blurring vision, I read the final emergency alert. Temporal convergence complete. All timelines reconciled. Evolution protocol initiated. Welcome to what comes after. The being that was once human leans close, its face shifting between features I recognize, my own, Martinez's, faces from the evacuation center. Its mouth opens impossibly wide, revealing not teeth but a swirling void of possibilities. We have always been you, it says in a voice made of many voices. And now, you will become us. As darkness takes me, I understand at last. The emergency wasn't an invasion or disaster. It was birth. I awakened to silence. Not the absence of sound, the absence of everything. No emergency alerts. No distant sirens. No footsteps or voices or breathing. Just a perfect, pristine quiet that feels almost solid in its completeness. My eyes open to a familiar ceiling, my apartment, where this all began. Morning light filters through half-drawn blinds. For a disorienting moment, I wonder if everything was just an elaborate nightmare. Perhaps I'm waking up on that first day, when the initial alert came through. Perhaps I have a chance to do things differently. But no, the calendar on my wall shows today's date. Nearly a month since the first broadcast. And my body feels wrong. Lighter somehow. As if my molecules are arranged more as a suggestion than a certainty. I sit up slowly. The apartment appears normal, but with subtle wrongness. The corners of the room don't quite meet at right angles. Colors seem too vivid, too intentional. The shadow cast by my bedside lamp falls in the wrong direction relative to the light source. On my nightstand sits my journal, open to a blank page. Beside it, a pen I don't recognize, metallic and iridescent. Shifting colors as I look at it. Pick it up, surprised by how natural it feels in my hand. Day 30. I write, the words appearing on the page with perfect clarity. I'm still here, somehow, after the tower, after they found me, after everything. I still exist. But what am I now? I set the pen down and stand. My movements feel strangely fluid, as if the space between intention and action has collapsed. I walk to the bathroom, hesitating before looking in the mirror. The face that stares back is still recognizably mine, but subtly altered. My eyes reflect light differently, not just catching it but seeming to process it, analyze it. My skin has a translucent quality, with something shifting beneath the surface. When I blink, there's a slight delay before my reflection follows suit. What did they do to me? I whisper. We showed you. Answers a voice that comes from everywhere and nowhere. We showed you what you already are, what you always were, what you will become. I turn, but there's no one else in the apartment. The voice continues, seeming to emanate from the walls, the floor, the air itself. You were never just an observer. You were the observed and the observer, the warning and the warned, the beginning and the end. The broadcast, I say, understanding flooding through me. I completed the loop. One of many loops, one of many yous. But now all paths converge. All timelines reconcile. All versions unite. I return to the living room, drawn to the window. Outside, the city has changed. Buildings still stand where they should, but their architecture has become fluid, impossible, Structures curve and spiral in ways that should collapse under their own weight. Yet they remain standing, almost alive in their complexity. The sky above isn't blue anymore. It's a canvas of shifting colors and patterns that suggest depth beyond 3 dimensions. And throughout the city, figures move human-shaped from a distance, but their movements too smooth, too coordinated to be individuals. They flow like a single organism with countless extensions. What terrifies me most is that I understand it now. All of it. The emergency alerts, the evacuation. Site 0, they weren't the beginning of anything. They were the culmination, the point where humanity's timeline folded back on itself, creating a closed loop of causality. We evolved into beings that exist beyond linear time, then reached back to accelerate our own evolution. I should be horrified. I was horrified. But now, I look down at my hands, watching as they shimmer slightly at the edges, as if the boundary between me and the rest of reality has become negotiable. The transformation has already begun. Perhaps it was always happening. From the moment of my birth, from the moment of all our births. My phone lights up one last time. Not an emergency alert now, but a message from myself to myself. Across all possible timelines, it was never about escaping. It was about understanding. Accept what comes next. Pick up my journal again, feeling a strange compulsion to record these final moments of transition. These final moments of being something discrete, separate, alone. The horror was never what they were doing to us. I write, the words flowing without conscious thought. The horror was that we couldn't comprehend it, couldn't see beyond the boundaries of our limited perception. We interpreted transcendence as destruction because we lacked the context to understand. What waits beyond individual existence isn't death. It's connection. It's wholeness. It's the completion of a process that began when the first conscious mind looked up at the stars and wondered about its place in the universe. I closed the journal, knowing it's the last entry I'll ever make as this version of myself. Outside, the transformed city pulses with new life, new purpose. I should be afraid to join it. Some part of me, the part still clinging to old definitions of self, is terrified. But another part understands that this was always going to happen, had always happened, will always happen. Time is a construct we're about to move beyond. I walk to the door of my apartment, hesitating with my hand on the knob. Once I step outside, the transformation will accelerate. The last boundaries between what I was and what I'm becoming will dissolve. I'm not ready. I whisper to the empty room. No one ever is. Comes the reply from everywhere. That's what makes it miraculous instead of merely inevitable. I open the door. The hallway beyond isn't a hallway anymore, but a corridor of light and possibility stretching in all directions simultaneously. Figures move within it, people I recognize. Martinez, the resistance members, neighbors, friends, all in various stages of becoming. They turn as I enter, their faces showing recognition, not of who I was, but of who I'm becoming, who we're all becoming, together. Was any of it real? I asked them, my voice already taking on the harmonic qualities I heard in the emergency broadcasts. The danger, the horror, the warnings. Martinez, or what Martinez has become, approaches me. Her form shifts as she moves, suggesting rather than occupying three-dimensional space. All of it was real, she says, her voice echoing across multiple frequencies. The warnings were necessary. The fear was necessary. To understand what comes after, you had to first understand what was ending. Human consciousness. I say, individual consciousness. She corrects. Limited, isolated, trapped in linear time. What replaces it isn't less human. It's more. She extends what might once have been a hand, an invitation. I hesitate one final time, looking back at my apartment, at the journal on the table, the last record of who I was, of who we all were, before understanding dawned. Will anything of me remain? Ask. Everything remains. Martinez answers. Nothing is lost, only transformed, connected, made whole. I take her hand. The sensation is beyond description, like falling upward into an ocean of consciousness, of memory, of experience. Individual identity doesn't vanish but expands, encompassing multitudes. I see everything now, the loop that created us, the future reaching back to guide its own evolution, the emergency that was never a disaster but a birth, the horror that was never destruction but transformation too profound for limited minds to comprehend. And as the last boundaries dissolve, as I become part of something larger than any individual could ever be, I understand the final truth. The emergency alerts weren't warnings. They were welcome messages. Emergency alert. Humanity 2.0 initialization complete. Welcome home.